So let's jump into the time in general piece. And again, this isn't going to be nitty gritty as it would be if I was teaching it in a workshop, because that, again, that's 2 full days to do the topic justice. But it is going to be stuff that can very much help you to hone where your energy and effort goes in your life. And I got to say, right out of the gate, I am not good at a lot of things. Like some things I'm a disaster in. Like I fixed the toilet yesterday at my house, that the toilet seat had been wacky for 6 months. And I couldn't figure out how to fix it. It turned out it was 1 or 2 turns of a screwdriver and took 5 seconds. But it took me 6 months to figure that out. So I'm clearly not the smartest guy on the planet. But there's one thing I'm exceptional at is how to use time, because I place such a massive value on it. And I'm a master at how to use it. So the things I share with you, if you can implement them and work them into how you function in your life, it will lead to a lot of fruit. All right, that's what I'm here for, is to give you tools and ways to do things that can help improve your life in any area you want to. So I'm going to give you basic questions. I'm going to give you some platforms. I'm going to give you things to consider. The purpose here is it's to help you be more balanced, more peaceful, more productive, more fulfilled, more joyful, and to grow in all the areas that matter most to you, which only happens with purpose. It does not happen by accident. And so we have to first recognize that time is a gift. We all get an equal share of this gift. Nobody is shorted. All right, that's just the bottom line. Nobody is missing this. If you woke up this morning, you were blessed with another 24. At least you hope you get another 24. At least you have right this moment, right? So our life and the fruits in our life and the fruits of our contributions in life will be a product of how we invest the blessing of the time that we get. It is our greatest currency, except for love. I got to say that one. That's pretty powerful too. But from the way we act, time is our greatest currency. So we have to be clear about one thing. I don't have time, or I didn't have time. That's a choice. It's not a real thing. There's no such thing as that. It's not an actual reason, right? That doesn't mean there aren't seasons in life which are a little more challenging, that require all of our efforts in one single situation. That is a fact of life. It happens. But as a general rule, if our life is about, I don't have time, we need to step off the merry-go-round and totally reset the way we're doing things, because that's not a way to live. And it's not an effective way to live. It means you're living in reaction. And so we're going to talk about living in proactivity as opposed to living in reaction. But first, let's just get a little bit more. I'm going to give you an exercise you can do. Write down the number 168. Just write it somewhere. You're not going to do this now. But what I encourage you to do is take that number, which is the hours in a week. That's what you get, 168 of those. And you can back out your sleep. And I want you to get full sleep. Not getting enough sleep is not good. You got to get full sleep. So whatever full sleep is for you, subtract that number. And then if you have a job that you have to show up in a specific block of time, subtract that number. But after you've done that, you now have total choice. The rest of the hours are choice. All right? That's just the bottom line. So it's important to understand, where does your time go? All right. So I'm going to show you a proactive picture here quickly. Something I learned from Stephen Covey 1 billion years ago. I teach it all the time and I operate this way. We're talking about proactive living, not reactive living. Reactive living will burn you out. It will be a life of misery. All right. Proactive living is a life of joy and fulfillment and accomplishment and growth and love and serving and all that great stuff. You have the circle of concern, which is a reactive circle. This is everything on the planet you could worry about. Over here is the proactive circle. This is everything on the planet you can control. All right. So this circle will always be bigger than this circle, because none of us controls the weather. None of us controls the economy. None of us controls other people's actions, right? There's many other things if we cannot control. However, There's plenty that we can control. So we all start right here, right, where there's nothing but a circle of concern. And we can do nothing about it except maybe scream and cry and hope somebody feeds us. That's how we start, right? But as we grow, we get a little more control. The question is, what do we do from there, right? And where do we focus? The people who live the best lives focus so much on proactivity that there becomes very little gap between what could concern them and where they focus their attention, where they focus their energy, where they focus their attitude, where they focus their actions. And to the degree that you become more focused on what you can control, over time, what you can't control has much less impact on you. And that's an important thing to recognize. All right, so that's this first little concept. I'd rather have 20 minutes to take you through it, but I got 2, and there you go, as a starter. So, an amazing life is spending as much time in the proactive world as possible. Now, the next piece of the spillover there has to do with this, all right? So this would be the credibility curve. Some of you who've been in any of my workshops before, or maybe you read Leading with Heart, or I think I speak about it a little bit in 3 Circles Living, right? This is how you grow and develop in your life and how you impact. Credibility is the driver of your ability to impact. Most of you have more credibility than you actually realize, but that's a topic for another day. But your credibility is going to be a combination of your competencies and your character, all right? And what that represents is a level of trust. Trust is the platform of credibility. If you reach out to someone and say, I'd like to talk to you, and they're like, great, it's because they have some level of trust, period, end of story. And so to the degree that over time you develop greater levels of credibility, it's going to have to do with how you show up and what you do when you show up. Now, the reason I show you this curve, first of all, the more proactive your life is, the more it's going to be in such a way that people are like, oh my gosh, whatever you do, I'm interested in talking to you, as a general rule. But we have to understand the time implication. You see, when we don't do well with time, that's clearly a competency issue, right? Time utilization is a competency. It's a skill set, right? And so when we don't do well in time, we end up making commitments we don't keep. And when we make commitments we don't keep, it doesn't matter the size, we are known as someone who does not do what we say we will do. That is not reflected as a competency issue. It is reflected as a character issue. And that is the importance of understanding how to well utilize your time. Because no one's going to sit around and say, maybe Kevin just didn't know how to use his time well. No, they're going to say, Kevin doesn't do what he says he's going to do. And that, for many people, is the end of any type of relationship. I'm just being real, right? It's going to be different for some folks, the level in which that matters. But this is why time utilization and getting it right in your everyday life is so important. If you say you're going to do something, not only is your credibility with other people at stake, it's at stake with yourself. The last person you want to lose credibility with is with yourself. Because that is a cascade that will take you down a place you don't want to go hang out very long, right? So that is the uniqueness of time utilization. There are many other things in the skill world that do also reflect over here. We're not going to touch on them today, but interpersonal communication can, if you're not have not developed the competency, can reflect as a character issue. Let's be real. We will forgive someone for a competency mistake, but we do not easily forgive character issues. That is the nature of life, right? So we want to always do what we say we're going to do. Sometimes we're well-meaning and we don't, but that's because we didn't have our time under enough understanding. We didn't have enough of a plan to know that we actually couldn't have committed to the thing we said we would do. The other person's not going to care. They're only going to say, I can't rely on you. I can't depend on you. I hope that that makes sense. This is a really important piece. So this curve is everything. I built my whole life on this curve. And again, many of you have been in workshops with me before. You know about this curve because I teach it. I talk about it. I teach it in every single thing I ever teach you operates on this curve. Everything. Because it's everything as it relates to the world around you. Okay, so here's some questions for you to consider. Again, I'm going to give you stuff fast. You can always go back in the recording and pull them out. One is what am I, not me, but you, what am I currently spending time on that is not adding value to what matters most in my life? That's an important question because this will form what I call your sacrifice list, right? This is where maybe you burn Netflix a little more, right? Or you burn social media a little more. Why? Because it's not certain things that you are giving your attention to, you're giving your focus to, you're giving your emotional energy to. They're actually affecting you and not allowing you to reach higher in your life, not allowing you to actualize, not allowing you to become who you are supposed to become. They're holding you back. So that is a good one to consider. Another one is, and this is on the opposite end of the spectrum, what are the 5 most important things I can be doing in a day? These couple, you might get a few things right away, but it'll take you a little bit of introspection, right? The third one kind of dovetails into the first one a little bit, but it hurts a little more, and that is what I call your should list. What are the things that you know you should do and you're not? That's another one that's really good to spend some time on. Okay, so time use, best time use is driven by a single thing, a plan. It's got to be driven by a plan. But a plan, what's a plan driven by? It's driven by a goal. And a goal, in essence, ideally, is driven by priorities. And priorities are driven by your values and your principles and your beliefs. And most often, the majority of people who try to set goals don't put them through this filter. This is the filter. I call it the pyramid of pursuits. At the base of this pyramid are your values, your principles, and beliefs. With a little introspection, and there are plenty of things out there to help you do so, although you probably wouldn't take you long to be able to solidify, what are my values? What do I not, what is my, rock? I don't go away from that, right? You can get that. Same with principles, right? One of my clearest principles is I never play the short game in anything, ever, ever. I only play the long game, always. Why? Because life is about building something sustainably. Yourself, the things you do, right? All of that, right? That's just one of mine. There's one of mine. I mean, the 3 Circles Living has several of mine in it. Beliefs is one that's a little bit interesting, right? Because some of your beliefs that guide you or limit you are false, and you have to face them, right? But you have to recognize that if you do anything, taking away a false belief, because that's just a matter of growth and leaning into something, if you do anything on purpose that does not fit your values and principles, you ain't going to do it very long. It's just sooner or later, the level of emotional and cognitive dissonance you'll be like, what am I doing? What am I doing this for? Right? And without putting ourselves through this kind of exercise, we can end up spending years doing something and not understanding why we feel the way we feel, because we're actually going against our very core. We're actually acting against ourselves. I mean, it's crazy. I've even seen people begin to develop success in something and then self-destruct. Why? Because they were in the wrong thing for their values, and then they got it later. So your values, principles, and beliefs are going to drive what your priorities are. And this is if you never read 3 Circles Living, I encourage you to read it. And if you have read it, I'd encourage you to read it again, because it's a good time to put it through the filter. I'm gonna spend time in that part of the filter, because those 3 circles are undeniable for everybody in some way, right? So, and then those priorities, now you could also, from a big business perspective, right, your mission is down there, or your core values are down there. But then those priorities drive your goals. And it's so critical that you have goals in all your priorities. Because if you don't, whichever ones you do, and they truly are driven this way, will consume the rest. And you'll end up being way out of balance. And no matter what you achieve, will not have been worth it. You can also put purpose next to this. And this also might encompass vision. All right. And then that's what drives your actions. And that's what drives your plan. And then you work it the other direction. All right. So just that is a model that I use. All right. And it's very, very effective. I spend no time doing anything that does not fit my values or principles. No time. All my time is on purpose. I don't waste any time. If you see me doing something that looks like wasted time, it's not. It's on purpose. All right. So I'm just giving you an understanding about how I look at time. All right. So planning is the key here. That is your number one discipline. Everything else will come out of that discipline. Planning and executing. So I once heard it said, don't begin a day until it's finished on paper. But you don't have to use paper. You can use some other kind of planning device. Don't begin a day until it's finished in your plan, basically. And win one day at a time and stack day of winning, day of winning, day of winning. That's how you build an amazing life. There's no microwave for an amazing life. You can't just nuke it. Poof, the genie popped out of the bottle, right? That's not how it's going to work. It's stacking days. As a side note, there's a lot of videos and a lot of content, both on toddburrier.com and on my YouTube channel. Some of those YouTube videos are kind of funny because they're like really old, right? I look at them like, who's that young cat right there, right? But still, there's lots of free, I put a lot of free content out there that supports a lot of these things and can help you. All right, so let's push this now into the next piece. All right, so the next piece, I want you to think about it in terms of your top 20% activities. In any area that you engage in life, there are lots of activities, most of which give you little return. But in all things, there are activities that give you significant return. Those are the top 20% activities. Using the old 20-80 concept, which is as true as you can get, 20% of your activities derive 80% of your results in everything you do. And so what are those activities? In 3 specific places. Because here's how it flows. And I'm going to give you some ideas as we go through here. So this is the flow. If you don't get this flow right, you're going to struggle. You have to come first. This is the only way you're going to show up for others the way you'd like to. You have to come first. And so, to me, these are not optional. I do not sway from this. I did not sway from this when I was bankrupt. I still did this first many moons ago. I never go away from it. Why? Because it's the long game. So, in the health circle, top 20% activities, I'll give you 4. One, what I call energy management. This is something that I created this idea to help a business person be able to see how proper this was, right? Because instead of self-care, it's energy management. When you take care of yourself physically and you know the things to do, move your body, fill it with great nutrients, eat quality foods, get some rest, hydrate. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know how to do that. It's doing it with purpose. When you do that, you have energy. Energy is what everything requires. It's what love requires. It's what work requires. It's what a cause requires. It's what creativity requires. It's what problem solving requires. It all requires energy. And we need to manage that precious resource in our time. So energy management, the second part of this would be development. That's more on the headspace side, right? That's personal development, professional development, building your skills, improving your mindset and your attitude, because that comes to bear as well. The third thing I would throw in here is something I call recreational development. Things that you do for pleasure that feed your spirit, feed your soul, right? Feed your creativity. They cannot be absent in your life. They have to be present. You don't have to do them over excessively, right? If you have a busy life and you're playing golf 4 times a week and it takes 5 hours to do it, you're probably out of whack, right? That's just the reality of it, right? So we have to think about it in the proper terms and we plan it. And then the other one, it's proactive, but it's against a reactive agent. You have to manage the drains. What drains you? Who drains you? So whatever drains you, you have to manage that. You got to create barriers. You have to minimize contact or exposure. You will not see me watching the news. You will not. That is not a protective activity for my life. So I don't. Doesn't mean I don't know what's going on in the world, but I don't watch the news. Right? I don't spend time in that stuff. I'm not scrolling social media. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying for me, that's a drain. That's a horrible use of my time. I'm purposeful when I'm on social media. I'm in there for a purpose. I'm gone. That's me, right? So it's not my place to tell you how to live. It's my place to give you insight. And then you do what you're going to do, right? So that's the health circle. That's the first circle. It's not optional. If I do tell you what to do, I'm telling you this, it's not optional. You got to do this one first. The next circle, right? That would be the relationship circle. And the term I use is relationship management in a broader picture. Because in your relationship circle, you've got 4 layers of relationships. You've got love, you've got friends, you've got community, you've got business. All of them require management. Look at your relationships from a 20% perspective. In your business, in your community, 20% of the relationships are going to make 80% of the things happen. Those are the ones you nurture first. Your love, that's about time and investment and attention. Probably a good thing is your mouth should only be open 20% of the time and their mouth should be open 80% of the time. But that's just an idea, right? So that is the second thing. And then again, place boundaries as it relates to people that drain you. If there are people that drain you, you got to create boundaries. Or if it's possible, you truncate. I'm a truncator. I mean, some people I love that I can't truncate. But outside of that, if you're a negative person and you're not interested in becoming better, you're not going to be in my sphere. Not because I'm better than you, but because it's too important for me to protect myself for my family and for you. I can't show up and serve you if I've had the life sucked out of me by someone who's only sees the bad in life. Come on. There's as much good as there is bad always. That's how the universe has always been and how it's always going to be. All right. And then the third area is your career, but also your pursuits, the project. If you're active in the project, your causes, right? That's what falls into this third area. But it's got to go in this order because each step here fills your bucket up. It allows you to pour in to the things that matter outside of yourself and the people you care about, right? That's the reality of it. And so again, in your career, what are your top 20% activities? That's where your time should be. Whatever your top 20% activities are, that's where you invest yourself. And that comes down to, a bigger session would include me having you write down all your roles. What are all the roles you play? And then are some of those roles, can you offload? If it's not in your 20% area, can you offload it, outsource it? Right? Can you contract it? Can you whatever? Right? Can you collaborate with someone? Can you do things, right? If something that's in your weakness area, it's likely not a top 20% activity. If it is for you, you have to deal with that, right? Just like for me in building my community years ago and even now, always, right? The first step, communicating with someone about getting together and talking, that is not in my strength zone. It's not. It's clearly a weakness given being introverted and non-confrontational and definitely not a salesperson. But I didn't have a choice but to overcome that weakness. I'll probably never be as good as some people, and that's okay. You don't need to if you're nice. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. Nice makes it easy, but that's a whole nother topic. All right, so You break down your roles, look at what the 20% activities are, and that's where the primary piece of your time must be planned. Because if you don't plan your 20% activities, the rest of the 80% will start biting at it. And you have to set boundaries and say, I can get to you later. I can get to you later, right? The top 20% of the people that are busy in anything I'm working, collaborating with, those are who I respond to immediately. I always respond to everybody, but those people will get response immediately, right? Because that's a good use of time. So just thinking about it in that fashion. Okay, so I hope that that little piece was helpful. Here's a little bit of a hack. Decide what your time is worth. Put a number on it. You can put it in future dollars, you can put it in current dollars. And then look at every activity you do in that lens and say, wait, is that actually worth my time? Or would it be better spent if I did this thing over here that is where I'm optimized and had somebody else do that? It's really simple. You know, like something goes wrong in my house, trust me, besides a toilet that needs a couple screws, I ain't fixing it. That ain't gonna happen, right? Why? Because that would be a disaster. First of all, I mean, who knows what'll happen, and it'll take me forever to do something that it would take somebody else 10 minutes. I'm paying for the 10 minutes. I'm going to pay for the 10 minutes so I can talk to Laura. You know, that's how I'm going to look at it, right? And then decide what your goals and dreams and those you care about are worth. That one's going to keep you up at night, because that one is a real big indictment of where your time might go. And then the last little nugget here is just to affirm the proactive, reactive perspective, because that's what I've been giving you here. Generally, right? Life has things that happen. I don't care what you do. There's no bubble that keeps you from having difficulties and challenges. But as a general rule, someone who lives proactively, their life is about growth, fun, becoming into the best person they can, living the best life possible, making their greatest contribution. And the person who lives in a reactive mode, the single word that describes that person generally is miserable. I mean, it's a choice, right? I'm not saying it's an instant choice. Nothing is instant. But man, it doesn't take long to get in the right direction. And we all get to choose. So that's the general piece.